Today's episode with Preston Spradlin from Morehead State, the men's basketball coach there in Kentucky, is presented by Compassion International. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world, and they are looking for you to join them in supporting and really rescuing 70,000 kids and their family who need urgent support because of COVID-19 and the pandemic, the ongoing pandemic. Now, 70,000 is also the capacity of an average pro football stadium, and this is where you can join us in filling the stadium. So far, we've filled over 60,000 seats, but our goal is 70,000, and we have a long ways to go. We need your help. You can restore what COVID-19 destroyed, providing essential food, medical care, and support for a child and their family during this pandemic. Compassion is the real deal. I promise you that. If you get involved, you will not regret it. Check out fillthestadium.com to donate today. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. Check out fillthestadium.com.
Welcome to Sports Spectrum, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, former ESPN producer, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can check out our website, sportspectrum.com, for all of our content. All of it is free. And it's again at our website, sportspectrum.com. Devotionals, articles, stories, testimonials, podcasts, you name it, it's all there and it's for free. Use our website as a resource for you to share the gospel with someone else who loves sports and maybe is trying to figure out this whole faith thing. And check it out at sportspectrum.com. And when you're there, make sure you sign up for our weekly newsletter for free. Just click that newsletter icon, put your email address in, and you'll be good to go to receive our weekly email, which updates you on all that we have going on here at the Ministry of Sports Spectrum, where sports and faith connect and bringing Jesus back into the conversation. And we do that today with Preston Spradlin. He is Morehead State's men's basketball coach. He got the job in 2016, starting as an interim coach, taking over for the previous coach, and then he got the job as the regular full-time head coach, his first head coaching job in college basketball. He was the youngest head coach in the country at that time in Division I. He started his career with Coach John Calipari in the University of Kentucky from 2009 to 2014 in their basketball operations department. He was a part of 3 Final Fours and a national championship under Coach Cal. And yes, we have some great Coach John Calipari stories here today on the show. But this podcast and this conversation is really about Preston Spradlin and what he's done, especially last year with Morehead State, leading them to a 23-8 record and a trip to the NCAA Tournament, winning the Ohio Valley Conference Championship, being a 14 seed in the Big Dance. That's what it's all about. And Preston was named the 2021 Ohio Valley Conference Coach of the Year, the OVC, and Preston is making his mark as a Division I men's basketball coach, and he's leading the way with his faith. And this is really where this conversation stems to, taking you from basketball to faith and how to lead for God's sake. You're going to love this conversation with Preston Spradlin, Morehead State's men's basketball coach. They're based in Kentucky, and he's got a great story. It's coming to you right now on Sports Spectrum. Preston, welcome to Sports Spectrum. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing fantastic. I really appreciate you having me on here and thinking of me and our program and giving me an opportunity to come on here and share a little bit of our story.
Absolutely. We want to hear about the program story. We want to hear about your story, certainly, Coach. And 2021 saw a really cool story written with Morehead State making it to the Big Dance. And what was that experience like? Let's start there. For you to coach and play in a tournament. I know you guys faced West Virginia. You were 14 seed, obviously fell short, but just a cool experience even to get there. What was that like for you as a coach to make it to the Big Dance as a head coach?
Yeah, an unbelievable experience. You know, it's something that you always dream of as a coach when you get into the business is coaching in the NCAA tournament, and especially doing that as a head coach. And There were times throughout the last 4 years that, your belief in your faith was really tested, that if you truly believed you were going to be able to get there with the adversity that we've had. And so obviously just a really different year with COVID, very different NCAA tournament. But it seemed like a lot of things really fell into place. And our players and our staff just deserve so much credit for that. And for me personally, being from Kentucky and being the only team from Kentucky in this very unique season to make the NCAA tournament and represent our state, which is a great basketball state, was a huge honor. And even personally here, Morehead is home for me. I'm from Eastern Kentucky, about an hour and a half, a little further east of here, town of Pikeville. It's just like Morehead. And, during that time leading up to March Madness, and we had a lot of flooding devastation here in Eastern Kentucky. And so a lot of people were out without their homes, kids out of school, people losing everything. And so for us to just be a little bit of, positivity and hope and light for everyone, it was a time that our team, that our community really needed some success. So I was very proud and thankful to be the person and the team to be able to do that for our community.
Yeah. And you mentioned, going through some adversity. I mean, last year was adversity for everybody, right? Last season for everyone, just in life, not just flooding and not just COVID, but everything. But on the court, you guys went through it. You were struggling for a few years there, not some great seasons. And then all of a sudden this happens and you have an opportunity to turn it around. What is the lesson or lessons? I'm going to ask you a lot of lessons questions today, sure. I think, Coach, but what is the lesson when you think back to a couple years ago and going through those seasons to be able to learn from that and bring it to where you were last year and have the success that you did?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great approach to the interview here because, I'm a teacher by trade, I have an education degree and always grew up wanting to be a high school teacher and a coach. And it's very fortunate that, God led me to be able to be in college coaching. And so a lot of lessons, we're always talking to our guys about learning, but the first few years was a big learning curve for me. Even though I was an assistant coach and I took over here on the interim basis back in 2016 for our previous head coach. And we had a lot of success. We finished second in the league that year, had 2 all-conference players, graduated 7 seniors, and then had 5 guys, move on to play professionally that year. When I went through the interview process and I got the job full-time, the day that I got the job, or the day after rather, that I got the job full-time, it was myself, one assistant coach, Jonathan Maddox, who just received a promotion this year to associate head coach. And we had 3 players. So 2 coaches, 3 players, and a brand new program. And I just happened to be the youngest head coach in the country at that time. And we had a lot of adversity. We had a very poor APR at the time. So we had a lot of things, a lot of obstacles that were in our way. And so year 1, we went 8 basketball games. But a big part of that it was such a learning curve for me, Jason, that I realized there were a lot of players that I was really good at coaching as an assistant coach when my head coach, was able to handle them the way that he did with his personality, and our 2 personalities meshed well with the types of kids that we could recruit and coach here at Morehead. However, when I moved over 1 seat and I became the head coach, what I quickly realized was I was terrible at coaching those players. And so I quickly realized that we had to begin to recruit guys that I could coach. And I had to communicate that with my staff. And so we had to get really good kids, first of all. Obviously, we were going to find guys who could play. That was the easy part. But we started really peeling back layers and figuring out what kind of people they are and what kind of family support that they have. Because we decided we're going to really build our program on family. We're not just going to say it in huddles. We're not just going to put it at the top of our locker room and print it on T-shirts. We're going to live it out in everything that we do. And it started in the recruiting process. So getting to know moms, dads, whoever was in their circle of influence and figuring out what kind of people they were beyond what kind of players they were. And so that's when our program really started changing. And then we put ourselves in the situation that we could recruit winners. We had the opportunity that we could take a kid who averaged 12 a game and won a state championship in high school, or we could take a kid who averaged 16 and his team wasn't nearly as good. And so we decided we were going to recruit winners. And so we really invested in our culture. And it was very, very difficult. But I think the biggest lesson for me throughout all of this is you've got to figure out who you are as a person and what kind of coach you want to be, what kind of program you want to have. And you've got to stay with it. And we did that. And that's what I'm most proud of, is that we've never cut corners. We've never compromised on our morals. We've never gone back and, made a change to our core, our plan. We've made adjustments, of course, and learned lessons along the way. But we're really proud that we've done it the right way. And as a staff, we've done this together. I've been very fortunate going into year 5 as a head coach right now. And so, Jonathan Maddox, I mentioned that, he was with me. It was me and him, 3 players, when we got the job. But he's going on 8 years being with me here. Dominic Lombardi going on 7 years being with me, 2 at Kentucky and then 5 here. Scott Combs going on 4 years being here with me. And it's afforded us the opportunity too to bring back former players in a graduate assistant role and allow those guys to get their head coaching or get their coaching start with us. And so we really treat it like a family. And that's been the biggest lesson, is that we've made a plan. We've stuck to it. We've made adjustments, of course, but we haven't compromised our beliefs and who we want to be and what kind of program we want to have.
How did you discover that you wanted to be a coach?
I don't ever remember a time that I didn't have the seed planted that I wanted to coach. And it's unique because there are no coaches in my family. No one in my family. I didn't grow up. I always loved coaching. I was always really close with all of my coaches from a young age, middle school, high school, college, all the way up. When I got into college, I wanted to be a high school coach and a teacher. That was my dream. I wanted to win a state championship in Kentucky. That was what I wanted to do. But when I got into college, I fell in love with the college game, traveling and doing all the things, even though it was at a very small scale at the NAIA level. We weren't flying around. We weren't on luxury buses. We were in vans, things like that. But I loved the college game. And so in the summers, I used to go and I used to work camps. Anywhere and everywhere that would have me, I would work a camp. And sometimes I get paid for them. Sometimes I didn't. Sometimes they give you a dorm to stay in. I spent a night or 2 in my truck, just before a camp would start, before a dorm became available. And so I just loved it. I loved traveling around and getting to know people and being on college campuses. And so I kind of made the decision maybe after my freshman year of college that I wanted to see if I can chase this dream of becoming a college coach. And so from that point on, kind of made the decision that no matter what it takes, that's what I'm going to do to get there.
And now you begin another season, which is, it's like, you have all this success and you put so much effort into wanting to see a season like you had last year, right? Where you make it to the big dance and Morehead State's on the national stage, and then it ends. And it's like, okay, here we go. We got another season we got to figure out. And here it is, in the early fall, and you're getting ready for practice. The kids are back to school and games are starting in less than a couple months here. Take me through kind of the mindset, now that you've been doing this for a few years as a head coach, of turning off last season and turning on this season and really getting at it to prepare for another year.
Yeah, obviously just a new challenge. We've always had this underdog mentality that we're just going to keep fighting until we get to that point. And within our staff, we've had belief that we were building a championship program and that we were ultimately going to do that. Now here we are. We've done it. And I'll be honest, that back in the spring, Jason, I caught myself a few times being enamored with winning a championship and getting away from what got us to that point, even in recruiting. I'm talking to players in the spring via the transfer portal and talking to guys. And we did well. We got some really good players who fit us on every level through the portal. But I kind of caught myself and I thought, my recruiting pitch is all about winning a championship now. And the years leading up to the championship, I never talked about that. It wasn't because I didn't believe it could happen, but I was so process oriented and so relationship oriented. And then we were selling ourselves and what we were going to do for a player, not that we were going to promise to win a championship. And so I had to kind of catch myself that, hey, I'm calling guys and saying, yo, we just won a championship. Come be here and win a championship with us. And then I caught myself and I'm like, that shouldn't be what I'm talking about here. Mm-hmm. And so I'm living in the past and there's got to be a balance, right? You win a championship and and the great experiences we talked earlier, but you can't live there forever. You've got to draw experience from it, and you got to move on. And so I had to kind of catch myself that I was changing my recruiting pitch. And it dawned on me right before our players come back in the summer. And I kind of shared this with my staff. I had a moment of very vulnerable realness with them. I said, guys, I got away from who we are in this recruiting process. Now, thankfully, I think we got some really good guys, and I'm going to work really hard to, build this relationship with them because the recruiting happens so fast. But I said, we have to be so careful when our team comes back, because we do have a lot of returning guys. We have really talented new guys coming in. We cannot skip the why of what we're doing. We just can't. We can't say, hey, let's run this play. You returning guys, get out there and do it. You new guys, watch them, and then you do it. That's not how we got to this point. We have to explain the why of what we're doing. We can't skip steps, and we can never use a championship as a motivation. We never did in the past. We never did. We talked about getting better, talked about being in our best. That's how we motivated our players. So I never wanted there to be a moment from me or from our staff that we say, hey, that's not a championship effort. That's not going to be good enough to win the championship this year. We never motivated in that way. And so through the recruiting process, I had to say to myself, look, when our guys get on campus, we have to be very mindful and very intentional about how we motivate them, and don't use the championship as a motivation. We didn't win a championship by motivating that way. We were very process oriented and taking it one day at a time. So I think that presented such a new challenge for us, Jason, that finally you do have this success, but you have to understand what got you there. Now you got to use that success, obviously, going forward, and it's a part of what you're doing. But it can't be the only thing. And so that was a lesson for us in this off season. But we've had a great summer with our guys. We had them here for 8 weeks, returning guys, new guys, had some guys getting healthy. But I set our team down at the very beginning, and I said, listen, here's our goal, right? We have a team goal that's not going to change. And that's just, we want to get better. And I know it's cliche. A lot of people say it, but it's literally all we talked about last season. So we're going to stay with that. We're going to get better. I said, but our goal for the summer is we need to become a family. Right now, we're a collection of players. We could shoot for trying to become a team. That's great. But we're going to practice and spend enough time together that being a team is just going to happen naturally. So we need to become a family. And so we spend a lot of time with our team, probably 2-3 team meals a week where we're spending time with each other. We do a weekly power hour, which is led by our character coach with Nations of Coaches, Rich Duffield. So we really spent as much time trying to become a family by the end of the summer as we did trying to become a good basketball team. And so now that we're back into the fall, we're getting these guys together, fighting the distractions of full class loads, 10,000 students on campus that weren't here in the summer. So now now that we've got that family piece in place, it's going to be really tested as we try to build towards being a good basketball team this fall.
Let's take a quick break from our conversation here on Sports Spectrum to tell you a little bit more about our friends at Compassion International, releasing children from poverty in Jesus' name. They are the most trusted child development ministry in the world, and it's a company and an organization and a partner of Sports Spectrum that we value so much. And the work that they do, when I tell you how important it is, I'm not sugarcoating it here. It's incredibly important work, releasing kids from poverty, but doing it in Jesus' name, teaching these kids who are stuck in really dire situations about how they can accept Christ and have a relationship with Jesus. That's the most important thing, but they do it with compassion and through Compassion's programs. Now, due to COVID-19, 70,000 kids last year and their families in Compassion programs were stuck potentially without a sponsorship and are in need of your urgent support. Now, 70,000 is the capacity of the average pro football stadium. And since we've launched Fill the Stadium and their Compassion program a year and a half ago, we've seen almost 58,000 seats filled with Compassion's program. You guys have come through. I'm telling you, every seat representing a child in need, and we're close to 60,000 seats. So our goal is very much in reach of helping 70,000 kids and their families. But we're not there yet. So we need your help. It's almost to the end, but we have to keep pushing here to help these kids. There's still 10,000 children out there who need your help. Your help providing essential food and medical care and support for a child and their family during this ongoing pandemic. Help restore what COVID-19 destroyed by going to fillthestadium.com and donating today. Any amount helps. Fillthestadium.com. This is a stadium that cannot remain empty. Fillthestadium.com. He is Preston Spradlin, Morehead State's men's basketball coach. He's also not just a Division I men's basketball coach, but he's also a Christ follower. And I'd love to dive in a little bit to your story, your personal story of faith, and kind of hear the importance of God in your life and maybe where that moment was when you made that faith your own and said yes to the Lord.
You know, I think for me, it was really my interim season. You know, I grew up in church, grew up in and out like most people. Had different times in my life where I was certainly more faithful than others, more reliant on my relationship and communication with God than other times. And I think when I got into my interim season, 4 games into the year, head coach resigns and I take over. And I just really dove into my faith at that time. Because at that point, Jason, we were fired. I have a letter from the Morehead State Human Resources Department that says, hey, listen, on this date, you're done. It's over. And it still sits on my desk as a reminder that, we're all expendable in this business. But it also is a reminder that the way I got through that was really growing in my faith. My wife and I both going through that hand in hand together. And so I don't know if there's an exact moment that I can pinpoint. But I think when that transition happened and I took over as the head coach during that season, that was really the turning point for me. And that's what got me through, that really tough year was being able to focus on my faith, making it about the players, not thinking about myself. And there was a lot of ups and downs in that year. I just shared this with my team in a power hour the other day, because we do a lot of discussion. I remember a moment during my interim season, right? When I first took over, we lost 8 in a row. Okay. And then we changed some things. We figured some things out. We ended up going on a great run. We ultimately finished second in the league that year, as I mentioned, but we had a stretch there that we won 4 or 5 games in a row, which was really, really huge. Right. And that 4th or 5th game, whichever one it was at home against Eastern Kentucky. If you're familiar with Morehead, you're familiar with the OVC, that's your rival. That's a big game to win that one. Yeah. And I can remember after that game, my ego grew and I started getting into reading my own press clippings, on Twitter. Everybody's saying, man, they should just give Coach P the job. Why are they waiting? Why are they doing this interview, talking about an interview process after the season? So I start thinking, you know what, they should give me the job. So then I start having resentment. I have resentment towards administration and all these things. And so I started believing, I had this disease of me where I was like, this is about me all of a sudden, right? And I had this unbelievably humbling experience the next week. We played at Tennessee Tech, a team that at that time we were better than. We really were, and we should have won the game. I was so concerned with me and what I felt like I deserved at that point in time because of my success. We got to the end of the game. We're down 1, 20 seconds to go. They got the ball out of bounds under, and we need to foul. So we do a great job. We're talking a timeout about, not letting the great foul shooter catch it. We want the guy who doesn't shoot a good percentage to catch it. And we do it, and the guy catches it. And we look at him, and we look at him. And then he throws it to the guy who shoots 90%, and we foul him. And when we foul him, the ball rolls over to me, and I'm squatted down on the court, and I'm screaming, okay? And I pick up the ball, and I slam it. Now, I meant to slam it and catch it just like this, but I slammed it so hard it bounced to the top of Tennessee Tech's arena, which is a big arena. And so the official looks at me, and he pops me. And I lost the game for our team because I made it about me. So I was crushed. The next day, I bring in my seniors, my 7 seniors. I share my apologies to them that I made the game about me. I took away the opportunity for them to win a game during their senior year because of my selfishness. And I recommitted to making the year about them. And we went out the next night and had an unbelievable come from behind victory at Jacksonville State. And then obviously went on to finish the year great. But it was such a humbling experience. And that was so faith-based. And so it's moments like that that helped me, Jason, really grow in my faith and got me through the year, because once I got off track and started worrying about winning, worrying about getting a job and all these other things, I was so distracted. But once I recentered and I started focusing on my faith and leading for my players and leading for God's sake, obviously it was a much better situation for everybody.
Yeah, it reminds me of the story or the scripture verse where, and I wrote about this in my book on leadership. I said, Jesus says that he came and he could have said, listen, I'm here. You guys, I'm Jesus. You all serve me like I'm the guy. And yet that's not how he was. He came and he said, listen, I came to serve, not to be served, and to give my life. And when I'm hearing your story and the disease of me, that really is biblical. When you look at Christ as saying, listen, he must increase, I must decrease. It's not about you, it's about him, but come with a servant's heart, come serving others, loving others, caring for others. You mentioned Lead for God's Sake. That's actually a book. I'm sure that's where you were saying that from. Todd Gongor wrote, and Todd's a great friend. And the idea of serving others, I have to imagine there's that element, not just in the lesson that you learned that day against Tennessee, but the idea of serving others, giving others, and creating a culture of, yes, you want to do well, but you really want to do it for a greater purpose, not just for God, but for others.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest thing, the hardest thing for young people to understand when you're discovering your faith. And we say it all the time. And I think stories like mine are important, because I think we oftentimes in our culture today think that we have to reach this level of perfection and purity before we can make that decision that we're going to, grow in our faith and that we're going to become believers. But it's quite the opposite. You're never going to reach it unless you submit and actually, and have great belief. And then you're going to have an opportunity to grow in that area. And, it's just like with the disciples, God didn't want those guys perfect. He got the broken guys and built them up. And I think that's all of us. And I just think that's such a great lesson with basketball. We tell our guys all the time. So we have something in our program that my assistant coach, Dominic Lombardi, came up with. And I wish I could take credit for it, because it's so powerful for who we are. Yeah. So we call it Get It Back, right? And our guys are not allowed to say my fault or my bad. And it's a habit we have to break from day one. And you might say, well, you want your guys to be perfect. It's quite the opposite. Our goal is to get better, right? Well, you can't get better if you're just, if you're not going to go hard enough, or you're not going to be willing to make mistakes. Because when you make mistakes, that's when you get coached. That's when you get better. It's when you accomplish that goal. And so we crave mistakes. We love them all the time. And so we embrace them. But instead of saying my fault, my bad, we build the habit with our team that they look at a player, they look at a coach, and they say, I'll get it back. I'll get it back for you. And what happens is players play free and loose and confident, knowing that they're not going to come out of the game for missing a shot or turning the ball over. What they are going to do is say, I'll get it back, and they'll sprint back on defense. They'll take a charge. They'll block a shot. They'll be the first to the floor on a loose ball, and they get it back for each other. And so that's something we literally practice day one, is we coach our culture with our guys with that. And it's such a faith-based driven concept that we don't want perfection. Okay. We don't. And even in your personal life, we don't need you to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. We're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. They're not going to be perfect. They're learning. But if we don't allow them to make mistakes, okay, and have teachable moments for them and how we handle them as the people who are responsible for them during this 4-year period, then we're going to be missing a great opportunity. And so we just decide that we're going to use our faith as a staff to help grow these guys on the court and off the court. And we love mistakes, but we love to give them opportunities to get it back.
You alluded earlier to Kentucky, and before Morehead State, which is in the state of Kentucky, you were actually in Kentucky with John Calipari, and in that program, in their basketball operations area. I'd love to know how that happened. How did you come to Kentucky, and and maybe get connected with Coach Cal?
This is very faith driven as well. When I was in college, I would tell anyone and everyone who would listen that I was going to be a college coach. And they would say, well, how are you going to do it? And I'd say, I don't know. I want to get my master's, and I want to, be a graduate assistant somewhere and get started coaching in college. And I would literally shake hands, look in the eye, and tell anyone that would listen to me that story. And finally, I told enough people that God had placed the people in my life to help me. And so I love telling this story because it was my 6th grade math teacher, right? Hadn't seen him in years. He was actually a commentator on the side at local high school games. Fantastic. They called him the Dick Vitale of the Mountains. His name's Jim Bill Frazier. He's got an unbelievable voice. Okay, he loves basketball. Yeah. So I'm at a local high school game my senior year at Alice Lloyd College. And halftime, I go up and I see him and I speak to him. And he says, Preston, what are you going to do when you graduate? And I said, you know what? I'm going to become a graduate assistant somewhere, and I'm going to start coaching in college. Wow. How are you going to do it? I said, I don't know. I have no idea, but I'm going to figure it out. And he was so, impressed with that, I guess, or had belief in me. He picked up the phone and started calling people who were within his network and his circle of influence. And so I always say that, there's a fantastic book by Bob Bodine called The Power of Who. And the basis of the book is that God places the people in your life who are going to help you. You don't need to build this new network. You've already got the people within your life. God didn't make a mistake by putting those people there. You just have to tap into it. And you have to get them to believe in what you want to accomplish. And my story is a great example of that, because he picked up the phone, he called some people who called some people and gave me an opportunity. And so I ended up getting in the film room at Kentucky. Wasn't necessarily on the basketball staff. I was in the film room, and I was just going to do what I did to get there and use my blue collar mentality. Being from Eastern Kentucky, I came early, I stayed late. I had about one job to do when I first got there that was film oriented. I didn't know how to hook up a VCR. Okay, that's the truth. I didn't know how to do anything involving film. But I got out of my comfort zone and learned how to do all the film stuff. I still do it today as a head coach. And I got to learn the X's and O's. I got to build relationships with the coaches. John Robick, who's been with Cal for 20 some years, still at Kentucky, has been so influential in my life, because I got to be with him every day doing scouting reports. And that's where I learned X's and O's, terminology, all these things. I got a PhD in it because he's one of the best in the business. And, I became kind of the remembering guy at Kentucky, right? So literally for 5 years, everything that came out of Coach Cal's mouth, I wrote it down and I remembered it. And I was not going to miss a moment or an opportunity to learn from him. And so after being there for 2 years as a graduate assistant, I got my master's. I had no idea what was going to happen next. I needed to find a job because I had just gotten married. My wife and I, we had no money. We had no anything. Okay. Yeah. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And Coach Cal asked me to be a part of his Dominican national team staff. And it was amazing. I'd never been out of the country in my life. I didn't even have a passport. And I got an opportunity to coach pros, 3 NBA players. I got to be on the court. I got to do scouting of FIBA teams internationally. I got to do individual workouts with guys like Al Horford, Francisco Garcia, Charlie Villanueva. And I got to travel the world and experience that. And through that process, Coach realized, wow, this little guy has listened to everything out of my mouth. So when we got to a practice with the Dominican team, he would say, hey, let's do this drill. And the majority of our guys on the Dominican staff, they weren't around at Kentucky, so they didn't know how the drill would go. I knew how the drill went. And so it was great that he from that point on, I got to spend 2 months with Cal every single day. And from that point on, for the next 3 years, he kept me close with him and gave me more duties, more roles, more responsibilities to grow as a coach. And just an unbelievable opportunity, especially being from Kentucky, growing up a Kentucky fan, to get to learn from one of the best in the business and someone who was also really strong in his faith and run this program that way with Cal.
What's the you said you wrote down a lot of lessons from Coach Cal. and everything that he was saying, you would write down or you would memorize or remember. What's the one, if there is one, if you can even pick one that you say, okay, that's sticking with me today. That's what every day when I get up, every day when I go coach, when I see my guys, that's the lesson. That's the way I want to continue to lead my guys, because I saw this with Coach Cal.
I just think it was everything, right? He's got the term players first, right? And it's not a recruiting slogan. It's real. It's real. It's how he makes every decision. And I try to do the same thing. And that's the advice he gave me, Jason, when I took over. He was one of the first calls that I made when I got told that night I was going to be the interim coach. He was one of the first calls, and he told me, make it about the players. And he does that. As successful as he is, as much pressure as there is on him on a daily basis, which is immense at a place like Kentucky, he makes it about the players, and he protects the players. I'll never forget, he said, you will get all the credit in a win, and I'll take all the blame in a loss. And I've told my team that many, many times, and that's a lesson I think you gain a lot of respect. And you're really living out what you say you're going to do when you're making about the players, when you do that. And so to me, that's the biggest lesson. One thing that he's phenomenal at, that I enjoy so much of the part of the job, are film sessions. And Cal had some epic film sessions. His personality really comes out in those. He's unbelievably funny. He's an excellent, excellent teacher, especially when it comes to making a quick point that's applicable to the entire team. So one thing Coach did, he made his own film edits. He cut his own film. He would write down the times and the description, and he would give it to me to cut up, or Dom, who's on my staff as well. So I do the same thing. If we watch film after a game the next day, I cut it up and I do the commentary myself. And to me, that's where he was at his best in coaching. And I feel like I'm at my best when I'm in my film room where I'm at right now with my team, and we're learning as a unit in that moment, because it's a time where we can really be a family and we can be real, and my personality gets to come out a little bit more. And so one thing we do that's fun, I know not to get off topic too much, and we didn't do this,
okay. Yeah.
But we love film sessions so much that we put movie clips in them all the time. And so it keeps it fun. It keeps it fresh.
Yeah.
Like we had a situation last year, kid Skylar Potter on our team, unbelievable athlete. And he's also great at taking charges. So anytime he takes a charge, I run a play for him that gets him downhill that he can use his athleticism. And so he knows, hey, if I take a charge, coach, you're running that play for me. Absolutely, we're going to run it. And so he got downhill after taking a charge. We ran the play for him, and he got this unbelievable dunk. He drove it hard right hand. It was just incredible. And so the next clip on the film the next day goes to the movie Bad Boys with Will Smith and Martin Lawrence, where they're driving and they stop in Fishtail or whatever. And Will Smith looks at him and he says, "That's how you drive. From now on, you drive like that." And so we have all kinds of movie clips that we throw in there. It keeps it fresh for the guys. It keeps it fun. They look for them, they expect them, and it keeps them engaged. But film's really important to what we do. I'm a visual learner, and having fun is really important to what we do, Jason. So we try to keep that element of fun all the time in what we're doing.
No, that's a great little nugget there. And I even the lessons from Coach Cal about film. I remember spending one day with him at ESPN when I was there, and it was after you all had won in 2012. He came, and maybe it was in October, to do the ESPN car wash, which is a day at ESPN when you go through all the shows. And I was one of the bookers or producers that was taking care of him that day. And I just remember being around him and how you could see why he was a great recruiter, not just a great coach. We didn't talk a lot of X's and O's, but just the personality and being able to relate to people and asking questions to others about them and showing interest in others. And I was just so impressed by him. And a lot of the really great coaches that I've met have that. Like, they don't make it about themselves and like, let's talk about all the accomplishments I had. They genuinely want to take interest in others and learn about others. So I just wanted to share that too, because that was my Coach Cal experience and nugget. It wasn't an everyday occurrence like yours, but it was, it was clear even in just 4 or 5 hours, in many ways, why people gravitate to him and really, just take a liking to him and want to go to bat for him, I guess, So,
We're in the business of people,
right.
And relationships. And as great a X's and O's guy as Cal is, and he's phenomenal, he's an elite relationship builder. And, I'll never forget in 2014, we're walking through a hotel at the Final Four, and there's crowds of people, right? It's roped off, so we have a way to get to the hotel elevator or whatever. And he hears a voice that says, Coach. Doesn't say Cal, doesn't say Coach Calipari. Little old voice. I mean, there's thousands of people yelling at him. And he knew this voice, and it was the mother of a player that he coached at UMass. And he immediately stopped right in the middle of his tracks, and he saw her, and he just went straight to her, and he pulled her out of the crowd and spent time with her. And it's just that's the kind of person he is. It wasn't. And he coached that kid 20 years ago, right? He probably sat in that living room 25 years ago. He still has that relationship, and that's what makes it really special.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know our time is limited. I want to be mindful of it, but my last question for you is a faith question that may dwell, or I should say, may seep into your personal life, even as coach with Morehead State. But what's the great lesson that the Lord is teaching you right now? Right. And so I talked about lessons earlier, and there's so many of them that we've shared here on the show. But God teaches us something new every day. I feel like today, as we record this, what's the Lord showing you and teaching you?
We did something last year, and I'll circle back to answer. We did a 1-word challenge at New Year's last year that Rich, our character coach, brought up to us. We didn't do New Year's resolutions. We talked about why those aren't a great idea. So we did a 1-year challenge, 1-word challenge for a year. And he gave everybody like 2 weeks to think about your 1 word. And we had to share in front of the team, players, coaches, everyone, what your 1 word was and why. And we made this huge collage, put it up in our film room with everybody's word on it, put another one up in our locker room. Everybody got their own plaque to put either on their desk as a coach or in their locker room or in their locker as a player, so that we could point to that 1 word. And I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And 2 things that I wanted to do that I felt I needed to get better at. Number 1 was living in the moment. Okay, not thinking ahead about winning a championship, getting a contract extension, trying to get another job, all the things that go through a coach's mind, right? I wanted to live in the moment and not think about those things. And then the other thing is I wanted to do a better job of putting my faith on display through my coaching, so that when someone comes into practice or they see us at a game or they see me anywhere, because I'm always the coach, that they walk away and they say, man, that guy is different. He's faith driven. He's a believer. And I didn't always feel like I'd done a great job of that, and I wanted to be more intentional about those 2 things. So the word that I chose was faith. And I felt like, obviously, I wanted to put my faith on more display, but I also, if I was going to live in the moment, not worry about the things I mentioned, wins, tournaments, contract extensions, whatever it may be, I would have to lean on my faith and just believe that it's out of my hands anyway. And by doing that, it really allowed me to live in the moment and try to maximize the opportunity that God has given me today. And so for me, that's the biggest lesson. And I'll be honest, as we talked at the beginning of our Zoom here, I was really challenged after we had success this off season, right? Because you start feeding into that. You start thinking, people are calling. You're thinking, you know what, maybe I should get a job that pays more money. Maybe we should recruit a guy that's probably more talented than a guy that we got. Let's not peel back the layers and figure out what kind of person he is. And entitlement comes in. I think God was able to help me catch it at the right time before it became detrimental and to keep me refocused. But this has been a great challenge this off season. And I think Rich has done a great job. I reference our character coach because, I share things with him. He's been phenomenal for me in my personal life and as professionally as a coach. But he encourages me to share these things with my team because I'm 34 years old, head coach, won a championship. These guys are 18, 22 years old. They won a championship. It's crazy to think that, I'm the only one who has those feelings and those thoughts, right? They got the same ones. And so I got to have a moment of realness with them and vulnerability to say, hey, look, I'm your coach. I'm your leader. Man, I was feeling like this for a while. I got to hit the reset button. And I'm sharing this with you because I don't want you to fall down that path. And, let's stay process oriented. Let's live in the moment. Let's not worry about next year. Let's not worry about whatever pressures people put on us, to be the defending champions and all. Let's be the best team we can be. Let's become a family this summer and let's focus on getting better. And this offseason, then the success has made that difficult, but it's made us better, which is all we really care about, Jason.
Yeah, and living it all through faith, which is great. Preston Spradlin, this has been a great conversation. Thanks so much for your time. All the best in the upcoming season. I know it's coming. It's going to come sooner than we even realize. In a couple months here, another college basketball season will be upon us. But thank you for being here on the show. Thanks for sharing your story, and I look forward to connecting again in the future.
Thank you very much. I truly appreciate you having me on here today.
And many thanks to Coach Preston Spradlin, Morehead State's men's basketball coach. I love talking to college basketball coaches in the off season because there's so much reflection that can take place from a coach as they look back on their success, but as they look ahead on trying to do it again the next season. And now we got college basketball about 2 months away here. And the first practice, he said, Coach Spradlin was telling me his first official practice, September 25th, and their first game is, I think, November 9th. So we're not that far off, just a couple months away from college basketball returning. And yes, football is also back, and that's a good thing. We're going to have the NBA starting up again soon. We got baseball in the playoffs. It's just a great time to be a sports fan. And so we appreciate Preston Spradlin for being here today on Sports Spectrum. Do us a favor, tell someone about today's show. Maybe text them, maybe post about it on your social media pages. Let them know about Sports Spectrum. Let them know about Preston Spradlin, a guy you can get behind now as the men's basketball coach at Morehead State. And tell them that this is what we are. We are a resource. We're also a podcast and a media company, but we are a resource generator, if you will, to tell someone about Jesus. That's our goal, to bring Jesus back into the conversation, to see us decrease and to see him increase. That's John 3:30 in your Bible. Read that scripture, man. Make that your moniker. He must increase. We must decrease. And I loved talking to Preston Spradlin. I love what Sports Spectrum is about, and I hope you guys do too. Thanks for listening and tuning in today. Before we let you go, make sure you check out, again, our website, sportspectrum.com, for all of our content. Tell someone about some of the stories and the articles and the devotionals that you see there. Make sure you subscribe and follow this podcast on whatever app you're listening to this show on so that you never miss an episode. We got multiple episodes every week coming your way. So plenty to catch up on, plenty to look forward to here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Again, my name is Jason Romano. We hope you all have a great rest of your day. Please tune in next time right here on Sports Spectrum.